Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. So for all you Audie fans, he is asleep in the bedroom as usual, which came as a surprise because today it got up to 86 degrees for our metric friends, that's 30, and it was bright and sunny, but he didn't want to go out. I have no idea why. I thought he would be all over me to get out that door and roll around on the patio, which is what he likes to do in the sunshine. Nope. The thing is, he's not even sleeping on the bed. You know, I make a little nest for him at the foot of the bed. Nope. He's sleeping on a chair in the corner. So obviously he's upset with me about something, and I'm supposed to notice this. Meanwhile, I went in and put the ceiling fan on because that's right over his little nest, and it's hot, and I thought, you know, maybe he'd like a little breeze on his belly. Nope. I am supposed to notice that he is irritated with me, and I am supposed to guess until I figure out what the cause is. Yeah, good luck with that, Audie, because I haven't a clue in the world. And by the way, 86 degrees today. It's supposed to be 46 on Tuesday. Oh, and again, for our metric friends, that's about 7.5 degrees. So I cannot predict the weather at all. I do know that by Tuesday evening, that cat is going to be really annoyed with me, and it's going to be all my fault that he wasted an entire bright, sunny 80-some degree day sleeping on the chair, even though I had nothing to do with this, and I'm still not sure why he's annoyed with me. All right, maybe he will turn up. I'm not holding my breath. So we're going to take a quick break for the intro, and we'll be right back. So, before we get started, I wanted to talk about some of the comments from yesterday's video, and I wanted to address a few questions that came up. So let me start with a lot of the comments were about the fact that I had told you, after showing you last week what my cabinets and my refrigerator looked like, that I had spent $284 in the previous 10 days on groceries. Yeah. And one of our viewers had said, well, wait a minute, we saw your refrigerator cabinets. That's not a lot of food. So I thought I would just quickly snap some photos today, 10 days later, and I took these pictures about 20 minutes before I began the video. So this is what my cabinets and my refrigerator look like now. So as you can see, not a lot has changed since you saw this cabinet, 10 days ago. If you notice on the top shelf, there are 3 boxes of cup of soup mix. And by the way, there is one on the middle shelf as well behind one of the cup of soup mix boxes. And that's because I realized I was getting low, and also they have been gradually discontinuing this product, and I like it, so I went off and bulk purchased 88 packages of cup of soup mix. That, with luck, will last me a year, assuming they do discontinue it. But the total cost on that was about $41, and that came out of that $284. And if you look down on the bottom shelf, you'll notice that a lot of those glass bale jars are now full of dried figs. And that was another like $41 because I bought 5 pounds of figs. So 30% of that $284 I spent last week was for a sort of restocking of items that I tend to buy in bulk because the prices are better. And that's about the only change that you can see. There is one change that you cannot see, And that is one of those cracker boxes is no longer there. I did what I should have done a long time ago, and I finished eating those crackers. I am going to make a diligent effort to finish off the remaining 3 boxes of crackers in that cabinet. And here's the refrigerator. Again, the major change in there is I put berries in my berry bowls because I did go out shopping and the fresh produce is starting to come in. Berries are now in season, so I was able to get some. So, goody. Not enough to really explain the high cost of that shopping trip, but still, as you can see from the refrigerator, oh, and here, let me show you quickly. Here's the freezer. Again, no real changes. So, yeah, I'm not actually making much in the way of inroads in terms of, $200 worth of food. Where is it? I don't know. That's the easy answer. And there is one thing that I failed to mention when I showed you my refrigerator and my cabinet last time, and that's my drinks refrigerator. I simply forgot about it, but here it is. That's where I keep soda and bottled water and whatever. And the reality is that's not a major contributor, because if I took the collective cost of everything in that refrigerator, I doubt it would add up to $20. So, where's it going? Well, my theory is that the prices have just escalated and we haven't noticed. I am concerned when I look at this and say, I spent $200 and I don't really have anything to show for it. The only other things in my home that are food products that you have not seen is the fruit bowl, the half loaf of bread. And by the way, I buy my bread in half loaves because I don't eat enough bread to get a full loaf and hope that it won't start to get moldy before I finish it. So, a fruit in the fruit bowl, a loaf of bread in the bread box, and a bag of potato chips on the counter. I'm not going to hide that from you, but I don't think you need to see a photograph of it. But yeah, there is a bag of potato chips on the counter. Where is the $200? See, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. And that's what I'm hoping to come up with by the end of this month. What am I buying? Where is the money going? So, I did want to address that because a couple of you had looked at this and said, wait a minute, there's a disconnect. You're spending a lot of money, but there's not a lot of food here. And I agree. I agree. That's the whole point of these videos. We're all spending a lot of money. And if we had spent this kind of money 20 years ago, we would know where it went because the boxes would be piled up in the hallways, in the living room. We'd have them under the bed. Not anymore. And I really am starting to worry about this. It's not tinfoil hat time, but I am looking at this and saying we need to prepare because grocery prices are getting out of hand. Now, that is the message for my friends in the U.S. I don't need to give this message to my friends in the U.K. because they've already felt it. For, 2 years now, I think. Winters go by and I start seeing headlines from the British press saying, eat or heat, which is awful. I mean, just that is a message that just slaps you in the face, that our friends overseas are having to choose between paying their grocery bill or paying their heating bill. And what we in the U.S. need to do is look at our British cousins as canaries in the coal mine. It's hitting them first. It's going to be hitting us next. It is already hitting us next. So some of the other comments were interesting. Other people, apparently in other parts of the country, now, I am in the Northeast, I'm in Pennsylvania. Other people in other parts of the country are seeing less sticker shock in the grocery stores. And it's a huge country. Geographically, we have all kinds of conditions. Additionally, we have 50 states, each of which have regulations that they are placing on, I don't want to say prices, but on conditions that might impact prices. If you are in an area where your pricing has not gone up yet, just treasure the moment. And if you can spare a few bucks from your grocery budget and grab a few things that have a long shelf life, for example, canned goods, consider stocking your pantry now because, like I said, we've seen our friends in the UK go through it. It's hitting the Northeast, obviously. That's why I'm complaining about it. And it may not be hitting the West Coast or the Deep South yet, but hey, it'll get there. So learn and prepare. And by the way, like I say, no tinfoil hats here. I am not saying let us go up into the mountains and write a manifesto. Not even close to that. I just want to make sure that our community is prepared for what may, in fact, be the early stages of something that is happening. Am I right about this? I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. Truly, I do. I sincerely hope I'm wrong, but I'm starting to see a pattern. So, other viewers, by the way, wrote about how they are maintaining their own gardens. And if you can do that, and you eat a lot of vegetables, especially if you can grow the pricier vegetables, I would say, hey, good for you. That is a great idea. I am in a farm area. In fact, if I walked out my front door and walked 10 minutes to the north of me, I would pass 2 working farms. So, yeah, this is farm country. Am I going to start a victory garden? No, probably not. I used to garden as a hobby, and I enjoyed it very much. But I found in my case, it wasn't cost effective. It was a hobby. So if it drained my time and resources and money, so what? It was a hobby. That's what hobbies do. Am I prepared to do this to keep food on my table? Only as an absolute last resort, because I find I am not a particularly gifted gardener. If I were going to do something like that, I would simply go up the street, talk to my neighbors with those working farms, and see if I could work out a way to buy produce from them, you know. But it's not an option all of us have. Some of us are in cities. Some of us are simply not physically able to do the kind of labor that gardening takes. And make no mistake about it, if you are producing your own food in your garden, you are spending your summer working in that garden. So there is labor involved. Not all of us are in a position to do that. But if you can, if you are in a position to do that, oh yeah, that can make a significant impact. Other things that can have a significant impact on your grocery spending, and I have this available to me locally, is you can buy a cow. Now, you don't actually get the cow. The cow does not come to your house or anything like that. You don't bond with it. But you purchase from a farmer who brings cattle to market for slaughter, and you can buy their cow. You can buy a whole cow, a half a cow, a quarter of a cow, and you can get really significant savings on your beef prices that way. Beef is very, very expensive, but that's if you buy it in a restaurant or you buy it in a grocery store. If you buy it in bulk from the farmer, you'll see the price is very much lower. Oh, and by the way, you can usually consult with the butcher who prepares the deceased cow for the table and get the kinds of cuts you like. So that is something you can certainly check out. I can do that locally, but the problem is I just don't eat enough beef to justify it. At one time, I did actually buy half a cow. I did this with one of my neighbors, so we each got a quarter of a cow, and I found that I ended up eating more beef than I really wanted to eat. And still, at the end of this, it was not practical for me. On the other hand, if one of my neighbors was running a major fishing operation, yeah, buying bulk would make sense. That's what I used to do when I lived near the water. I would either buy directly from the boats or buy at the local fishing markets that usually have those at the dockside where the fishing boats come in. It'll be like a local fish market where you just buy a fish, take it home, and deal with it yourself, which I can do because I'm from New England. I think we are born knowing how to gut a fish. I think that's something in the water there. If you are a New Englander, you can gut a fish. So that's something that would make sense to me, but it's not available to me. If it's available to you and you like fish, absolutely. The cheapest way to do it is befriend the actual fishing people. I was going to say fishermen, but they're not all men anymore. Go befriend the local fishers and buy directly off the boat. That is very inexpensive, and the people who are catching the fish and would be selling it to you can sell it to you at a lot higher profit than they could make selling it to the markets or the stores or for all I know, the fishery industry that buys it from them. So it's win-win. They can make a profit from you and still sell it to you dirt cheap and cut out the middleman. And if that's available to you, go for it. I did that for years, but I'm just not close enough to the ocean right now to be doing that. And I did that in Boston. I did that in Rhode Island, not in Providence, but in Rhode Island, in North Kingston, Rhode Island. And I did that in Washington, D.C. So you don't have to be in a remote area to do this. So just saying. And those are ways you can cut down on the cost of some of the most expensive items. But also, we have things we used to do, and a lot of us are not doing that anymore. I remember when I was a child, we would have a meatless day every week. And we didn't do this all the time. We would do it whenever my mother's church had a drive to raise money to feed people who were hungry. And that's all I can tell you about it because I was a child. I have no idea where the hungry people were, how they were being fed. But I know that what the church did was they organized like Meatless Wednesday. And the families in that congregation would simply take whatever it was they would have spent for meat on Wednesday and donate it to feeding the hungry. You can do that. And obviously, it would be great if you donated the money to feeding the hungry. I'm not trying to stifle anyone's charitable urges. But you can do that in your own homes these days. Just say, I'm going to take one day a week, and we're just not going to have meat on that day. And instead of feeding, well, you might be feeding the hungry if you simply reserve it for your own future grocery spending. But it's a way to cut down the grocery bill. I found as a child that doing that, this Meatless Wednesday thing, actually made it fun. You know, it was something that we kind of looked forward to. It's like, what's going to be on the table for Meatless Wednesday? Because when I was young, and many of you are my age, so you know this. You sat down at the dinner table, and your plate looked a certain way. There was a chunk of meat, there was a chunk of starch, which would be usually potatoes, macaroni, rice, something like that, and a chunk of vegetables, and corn and peas were big when I was a kid, although they are now over into the starch section. Yeah, I can't keep up with the changes. So, yeah, that would be, your carrots, your green beans, whatever. And that's what a dinner plate looked like. We were accustomed to eating that way. And there would be occasional meals of like stew or a casserole, something like that. But I can remember my mother. And my mother was born in 1929. And I'm sure we all remember what happened in 1929. Yep, the start of the Great Depression. And she spent her adolescence in the Second World War. So for my mother, something like stew for dinner screamed poverty and hardship. She didn't like that. That was something she would do rarely, mostly because she wanted her children to have what she felt she couldn't have as a child growing up in a time of privation. And I get that. That's what every parent wants. But we, the baby boomers, got used to a level of abundance that essentially set our templates. So even now, when I start to think of meals, I want to plan a meal. I am thinking of that meat thing, that starch thing, and that vegetable thing. That's my thinking. Now, does that mean that's what I'm going to go and prepare? No. It just means that's the first thought that hits my head. And then I will start doing a little fussing and planning and rearranging. Mostly because I don't eat very much of that meat thing. By the way, it was only fish in that little meat section of the plate in my house on rare occasions because my mother did not like fish. So yeah, this is not something I got from my childhood meal plans. So for me, that whole meat thing, no. And in my mother's kitchen, something like Italian food, spaghetti night was a massive treat because we didn't have that on our table regularly. That was Italian food. That was ethnic. That was somebody else's culture. I know it sounds weird, doesn't it? When you start to think about American dinner, you start to think of, spaghetti with meatballs. Sure, how American is that? Yeah, I got news for you. In the 1950s, that was immigrant food. I like Asian food. My mother never prepared an Asian meal in her entire life. Didn't happen. She was very elderly before I was even able to persuade her to go to a Chinese restaurant with me and try it. So all of the cuisines we have available to us, the many, many options, were not available in our childhood. Well, of course, unless you were Asian or Italian, in which case that was on your table every night. And I imagine that the meat, potatoes, and vegetable thing was just not on the plate for you, quite literally. So I guess the upshot of this is we need to start taking a look at what we are doing with our food and how much of our meal prep, food planning, food spending is being programmed by some 1950s and 60s rules that have since been revised. Oh, and by the way, I've seen this revised so many times, I can almost guarantee you it'll get revised again. Remember, we had 5 major food groups, and you wanted something from every food group, and and now there are different, it's like 7 food groups, and it's formed in a pyramid, and you have a portion the size of your fist, and I can't even keep up anymore. But nutrition advice from the experts, and this is not just nutrition advice from my mother, who was not a great cook and knew nothing about nutrition, but from the experts, is changing. It's like every couple of decades, it gets completely revised. No, those are the old rules. It's like, well, and I got to tell you, my reaction to that is, why should I listen to you now when, you were saying the same thing 20 years ago and you're contradicting it now? If you were wrong 20 years ago, how do I know you're right today? So, yeah, I kind of have some issues with that, because I do wonder how much our meal planning, our food buying, is influenced by things like the beef lobby. Remember, that's what dictated that hunk of red meat on every plate back in the 50s and 60s. It was the beef producers lobby that did that. So I would say, let's look at everything that's available to us. Can you garden? If so, are you any good at it? Can you produce food? Can you make it economical? Because now I can produce food, but I can't make it economical. If you can, fantastic. Go for it. Can you bake your own bread? If you can, fantastic. Go for it. People who can and do bake really enjoy it. So it's not a hardship for them. This is not something I'm interested in. If I wanted to cook, I never would have gone to college. So that kind of tells you my life trajectory in a nutshell. The fact is that these are great hobbies that can reduce your grocery spending. If you have farms, that, especially beef-producing farms or even poultry-producing farms, you can probably buy your beef or your chicken directly from the farm. And I'm sure you're going to get much better prices. If you live on the coast, you can go down to the docks and get your fish either directly from the boats or from whatever fish markets they have on the docks. There are ways to cut food spending. Is this available to all of us? No. No. The fact is that we have great geography here. We have vast tracts of farmland from one side of this country to the other. I'm in the Granite State. Just keep that in mind. And I have 2 working farms just to the north of me. So in rocky northern U.S., still farms. We certainly have the opportunity to take advantage of what might be available locally. However, I will freely admit that if you are living in Chicago, where you don't have an ocean available and you're in a high-rise apartment, you're not going to be able to grow your own food. Yeah, some of these things are going to be more difficult. If you live in a city, if you live in an area where prices are just naturally higher than they are in other parts of the country. I'm in the Northeast. Our prices tend to spike first. But as I said before, remember, just because it's hitting us first, that should be your wake-up call that you're probably next in line. But there are ways to reduce grocery bills. And I think for the next few weeks, we should explore this. So I want to start you off with one of the things that I am doing to reduce grocery spending. And uncharacteristically, it involves beef. I got a box of barley recently, and I think it was like $1.89 for a box of barley. Barley's cheap, by the way. You usually, well, at least in my store, you go in and it is like Quaker barley, one brand, one option. So I've got a box of barley. I have a large package, and I showed you this in my freezer, a large package of store brand mixed vegetables. Again, cheap, but because of what I'm doing with it, the quality is not so important. And I have some leftover beef. It just went straight into the freezer. I'm not sure. Oh, yes, I got that because I thought it might be a good idea to fry up beef with my eggs in the morning. That turned out to be a disaster. I don't like it. So I froze that leftover beef, which is already cut into very small pieces. And I have bouillon cubes in my cabinet. So, barley, bouillon, mixed vegetables, and beef. I am going to turn that into either beef with barley soup, which I love, or beef barley casserole, which is just like beef barley soup, only there's a lot less water. In other words, you allow the barley to absorb all of the water and not just throw a handful of barley into the soup. So that is one of the things I am going to do. I like it. It's very filling, and it's very, very inexpensive. This is a meal, and I will actually do a calculation for you, but this is a meal that probably costs about 50 cents a serving. And it's got everything. It's got vegetables, it's got beef, and beef is getting pricey, and you don't have to work at it. I have a slow cooker, and yeah, we're all friends, so I can admit this to you. It is a Paris Hilton slow cooker. Oh yeah. As I said in my review of this slow cooker, I never thought I would buy a Paris Hilton anything, but I did, and I love it. So I have a slow cooker. The barley and beef bouillon, which is going to be the stock, and the little beef, which I'm going to cut up even smaller than it is already, and about a half a package of that mixed vegetables. That's all going to go into that slow cooker. And I am going to be able to ignore it for several hours, which is great, because I'm a lazy cook. I will not stand over a pot stirring and like, oh, look at me making food. No. I can cook if I have to, but if I can avoid it, I will. So that's what I'm going to do. And I am going to have beef with barley and vegetables, probably about a week's worth of it. I will most likely, because sometimes I get appetite fatigue eating the same things over and over again. Not usually. I can usually do that. But I'm probably going to freeze up about half of it, and I will have that for the next week. And it will be inexpensive, and it's going to be filling and nourishing, etc., etc. So that is the one quick and easy I want to leave you with, because it is very, very inexpensive. And if you can grow your own vegetables, it's going to be even less expensive than it was for me, because I think I paid $2 and change for that giant package of mixed veggies. So that's what I want to leave you with, and I think I'm going to make a point of making sure we have at least one here's the recipe, because my recipes do not involve a measuring cup. My recipes involve ingredients. You put it together any way you want to. If that beef barley soup sounds good, well, reduce the amount of barley, and that beef barley casserole is going to be beef barley soup. So that's what I want to leave you with. By the way, if you have quick, easy, low-cost recipes, we have a comment section that is just waiting for you. All right, that's what I have for you today. Thank you for being with us. For those of you who follow the Just Chattin' series, that's 8 o'clock tonight. That's New York City time. And by the way, the time difference, because the UK has set their clocks forward along with us, the time difference is back to 5 hours from Eastern Standard Time. So, for those of you who follow that 8 o'clock New York City time, for everyone else, thank you for being with us. Really, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Also, I'm looking forward to your quick, easy, cheap filling recipes. Just give me your, day before payday, and this is what we're eating. And we will be able to work with that. That is going to benefit all of us. All right, we are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. Thank you for being with us. Have a terrific day.